Hey everybody, welcome. It's me, JJ Panzer, your smart apartment advisor. It's good to see you on a Wednesday afternoon. It is always a pleasure to see everybody, and today is the 10th of the month, so this is the day we will go over our rent payment numbers. They're actually not that bad. They're almost the same as last month, so I'm grateful to see that we don't have too much of a increase in the number of tenants who haven't been able to pay. I hope that that means that most people are able to work from home and their situation is fairly stable and they're not suffering as a result of the economic crisis and the pandemic that caused it. So this month we have 36 residential tenants who requested some kind of deferral of rent, and that's only two new ones since last month. So that's really encouraging. We have two unexplained non-payments. One is a new property that we just began managing, and it could be a miscommunication with between the tenant and us and the landlord, where I think maybe the landlord collected the rent already. And then another one that we're having a hard time communicating with. But other than that, we're doing pretty well. The interesting thing that I noticed when I was looking at these numbers this month is that 16 of the 36 tenants, or 44%, who requested some sort of a deferral at any time in the last 90 days did make a partial payment in June. So almost half made some sort of a partial payment in June. Of the partial payments, 4 of them paid 100% in June after missing payments at some point earlier in this period. So perhaps this is an indication that some of the unemployment benefits and the extra stimulus money is making it into people's hands. Of the remaining tenants who short paid in June, the average payment was 62% of a full month's rent. So people are paying as much as they possibly can, and we really appreciate their going ahead and doing that, and we're glad that we're able to work with them to defer the rest of it and to deal with it later. These 16 tenants owe an average of $2,200 overall since March, and that balance represents 81.5% of a full month's rent. So people aren't generally, of this smaller group, the 16 people, they don't owe more than a month's rent. I have to go back and do a little bit more analysis on the rest of the people, the additional 20 people, just to see how big of a balance they have on their books. We have one or two who owe, a month, up to a month and a half. I've got a tenant who is behind by a month and a half on an $1,800 a month apartment. But other than that, we're doing pretty well. Some of the short paid rents are by as little as $400, and that's on a $5,700 rent. So I don't know what it is that made that happen. But for the most part, the numbers aren't awful. The vacancies are a bit more of an issue. We have 13 units that are currently available and being shown actively. Another dozen that are currently expecting to be vacant in the next 30 days, 30 to 60 days. I've got two that have longer notices that stretch out to 60 days, but most of those will be getting back in June. Or early July, and then another 11 that are under construction at various stages. So we've got 36 units that are likely to hit the market in the near future. And Josh and I were discussing this earlier today over email conversation. It's kind of interesting. The San Francisco market has gone off a cliff, and we've got units that are vacant for a lot longer than they have been in the past. I've got one in a building that Josh and I own together that has been vacant for 9 weeks now. We've brought the price down a little bit. We're offering a free month's rent actively. We're just not getting any interest, and we may have to keep bringing the price down. But the issue is that a lot of other units on the market seem to be priced at similar rates. And so I'm hoping that our leasing agents can find and identify good tenants and make a reasonable deal with them as quickly as possible. But obviously the big lever that we have to pull is to reduce price to get more attention. So we'll be working on that, but the San Francisco market seems to be pretty quiet. Josh had a listing in the East Bay for a condo, was it a loft for rent, that got on the market and got some interest pretty quickly. He negotiated a good deal with the tenant for a small discount, but got it rented. One person interested, one person rented is all you need. And he got that. And so, we're having, more trouble in San Francisco than we normally do. And, it's just an interesting time to be trying to rent places in San Francisco. So that's the rental analysis right now. Be happy for anybody, if you have questions you want to ask a little bit more, be happy to take questions now about the short payments in rent. So anybody have any thoughts or ideas or questions, you can raise your hand or put them in the chat. It looks like I've got, yes. We'll also have a special conversation with Josh today. As I mentioned in the email, Warren Buffett said, be greedy when others are fearful and fearful when others are greedy. And we'll see if we can get a little bit of insight into potential opportunities in the market, whether the sale market has pricing opportunities for people or opportunities to get properties that may have trouble in the early going and recover nicely after a little while. So, with that, I think I'll proceed to the next topic of conversation, which is the anti-eviction legislation that was passed at the San Francisco Board of Supervisors on Monday. I know that a lot of us participated, sent emails, expressed our disappointment and outrage to hear that the Board of Supervisors was going to simply allow for any tenants who have difficulties to never have to pay it back. And I'm not necessarily sure that that's really entirely what we're dealing with here. Once again, I see Kate asked a question about the percentage. This is about 6% of our overall units. We've got about 500 units, 518. We've got 484 or 475, something like that we're expecting rent from that are not in some stage of being vacant. So, it's holding steady at about 6% of the overall portfolio. And it isn't a, huge number in terms of the gross dollars that we're expecting to collect from our tenants each month. But right now I was concerned because in April, it was fairly low. We only had 15 or 16 people, and it doubled from May to June, from April to May, it doubled. And now seeing that it's holding steady in June, I was kind of hoping that we weren't going to experience an avalanche of people unable to pay, and it wasn't going to grow, as people started to exhaust their savings. Right now, let me go back to the anti-eviction legislation. So the legislation was at the Land Use Committee on Monday. There was a hearing. I sent out instructions to everybody to please call in and express that, that's the only eviction, unfortunately, is the only lever we have. We are housing providers, and we're selling time in a specific space. That's all we have to offer here. And the only remedy for not paying the money that people agreed to pay or were supposed to be paying to have the space for that specific time is to no longer allow people to occupy that space for that specific time. And unfortunately, if we have to kick people out of places, they lose their homes. And that is unfortunate. And it's not a part of our business that is anybody's favorite, but it's the only real remedy when people are unable to pay. And in this circumstance, the Board of Supervisors introduced legislation that said that anybody who had a COVID-19 related income issue and was able to prove it would not ever be able to be evicted as a remedy for non-payment at that time. Now, it still remains to be seen a couple of things on that legislation. First of all, it remains to be seen what happens in court later, because this is clearly the kind of legislation that would constitute an illegal taking of property by the government from one person, the landlord, and giving it to another person, the tenant. And so that is clearly going to be something that we'll talk about on Friday with Denise Ledbetter. She'll give us an update on where the rental housing industry stands in regard to filing a lawsuit. I'm sure that lawsuit is probably on its way to court right now to be filed. But at this time, that's going to be our only real recourse, and it may take a lot longer. It's probably going to take a lot longer for that to be established as to whether that's going to be the outcome of that the legislation will be overturned. I'm not sure if that's going to be the case. It'll be interesting to find out more on Friday what Denise has to say, because under extreme circumstances, I think a judge may very well look at this and say extreme measures are necessary. So it's very interesting. But once again, I'm encouraged by the fact that all of the tenants that I've talked to who qualify for this kind of assistance and deferring their rent as a result of having lost their income or a significant portion of it, are dealing reasonably. And it takes obviously a lot longer for legislative issues, for legislative solutions to be passed and for funding to be made available at the state level or the local level. But I'm hoping that at some point in the near future, we're not necessarily forgiving these balances yet. We're hoping that at some point, at least for the smallest of the landlords, people with single units who are severely impacted, or smaller buildings where the rent roll is already challenged, hoping that at some point in the near future, there may be a way to recover without having to forgive the entire amount or just forget about it, because the tenant doesn't have to really talk to us about it if you're not able to evict. So we'll talk a little bit more about what the legislative wrangling is going to be when we talk to Denise on Friday. But right now, this is not a huge issue. It's it's certainly a concerning issue, but it isn't top of mind as far as changing the way we do business today. We're going to keep working with everybody and being as compassionate and kind as we possibly can, and counseling our clients to be patient and understanding as we go through this, because we still don't know how long this is going to take and how bad it's going to get, and how we're going to fix it. So with that, I think, Nicholas, what's up? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't understand why you don't think it's such a big issue. To me, it's a major issue, and especially now as the information passes among all tenants. Even though I think most people are honest and doing their best, I think it's the turning point is for the tenants now, and I think it is a big problem. And I don't quite disagree. I disagree with you, JJ, in that it's okay, but it's not a bad thing. For some reason, I think it's a bigger and more severe problem, and we can't gloss over it.
Well, I'm not glossing over it. I think that any tenant who fails to pay their rent as part of some, ideological stand or taking advantage of the situation, you are still allowed to file a lawsuit. The lawsuit can get tossed if the tenant provides the right paperwork that says, gee, here's my termination paperwork, and it happened on March 15th, and I lost my job, and I no longer have any money, and I'm not able to pay the rent. And if somebody is not able to prove that they lost their job, and they're not able to prove that they actually qualify for this kind of support, I think, and we'll verify this when we talk to Denise on Friday, I think that the judges are going to look at someone who's opportunistically choosing not to pay rent and using this as cover pretty much askance. They're going to say, look, it doesn't make sense. Now, you get it out in court and someone says, well, I had some other issue that was causing me to not be able to pay rent. My family member was unable to pay rent, and or my family member needed financial support, or I had a death in the family, or whatever it is.
I would like
could very well happen.
JJ?
Yes.
I would like to point out that if your tenants are receiving $1,000 a week and you have multiple tenants and there's no money left in their checking accounts, but they receive the money and you did not get the rent, you're still never going to get the money. What are you going to do? You can't spend all your time in court going after nothing. They've spent their $12,000 a month on other things or whatever it might be. So I don't concur necessarily with what you're saying, because even if they have the ability to pay, we don't know it, number one. And number two, it's going to be impossible to prove it in the future.
Well, I think that we have to take these situations as they come.
Okay.
And I'm simply expressing that I don't think opportunistic situations are going to be looked at with a great degree of sympathy. And nobody's going to go through and do a full audit of their finances and say, well, you spent, $5,000 on a plasma TV or something, or a very expensive piece of electronic equipment, or you bought a car and you spent all your money on something else. I think that, as landlords and property managers, I know a lot of times I have conversations like this with my clients where people are imagining the worst case scenario and they're worried about it. And I understand the fear and the anxiety that you and lots of other people feel. And I'm simply expressing that we need to take these situations as they come. And my experience in dealing with 500 plus units of rental property in the Bay Area right now is that I had one situation with a tenant who asked for a reduction in rent and was unable to prove to me that there was any reason for it. And she was telling me she was getting ready to move back home and blah, blah, blah. And I just said, you don't qualify for this forbearance. Now, if she didn't pay, I have a security deposit and I have other things that I can do that are not related to an eviction. And I still have the right to file a lawsuit. And if we're going to have it out in court as to whether she actually is able to pay and whether it's related to COVID-19 or not. The fact of the matter is, you can still file a lawsuit. Yes, you're going to have to go through it. It's going to be bad, but it's going to be bad for everybody in every circumstance right now. This is not specific to this, that tenant. I don't see so far a lot of people doing dishonest things, taking advantage of the situation in a bad way. I'm quite seeing the opposite. Most tenants are doing everything they possibly can to come forward with the rent. They understand they have an obligation. They value the shelter that they have and the place where they're sheltering in place. And I don't think it certainly doesn't do me any good to stay up at night worried about this specific issue. I have plenty of other things to think about that I need to be worried about that are much more near-term problems. And we'll deal with them as we go along.
I understand.
It's not something that I want to. I certainly don't want to counsel any of you to be worried about this situation right now. I'm if I can take something positive out of all this, I think it's that the tenants have been, they have responded positively to our offers to help and to be reasonable. So,
okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas. I appreciate your joining us on the calls and your question and asking the hard one. I appreciate it.
Well, one other thing I'd like to ask. What do you think about sending all of our mortgage statements to the Board of Supervisors with a note, how do I pay?
Well, I mean, you must be in Palm Springs. No, I don't know about that, but I think that sending them, your property tax statement and saying, how do I pay? That makes more difference. And if you're actually in a situation when it comes to, hold on one second here. If you're actually in a situation where you have enough tenants who are falling behind on rent and having a difficult time with making their payments, and it's causing you difficulty, the banks have been, basically just as reasonable so far as I've seen. A few of our clients have gotten forbearance agreements on their mortgages pretty easily, and I'm glad to see that. And that's really usually the first biggest expense. And anybody who has a fairly low mortgage usually has also low tax basis because of Prop 13. But I think I think writing to supervisors and saying, look, your salary is paid out of my property taxes. and if I don't collect rent, I can't pay my property taxes. And guess what's going to happen after that? So, it's important to make it clear. But right now, I don't, once again, I don't have too many clients who are so severely impacted that they are, in danger of not being able to take care of their families as a result of not receiving their rent.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, with that, I think I want to turn this over to Josh for a little bit of we can have a conversation. I would, hold on a second. Actually, before we do that, Dom has a question about, he says he listened to the entire hearing on Monday. I understood a couple of callers say there are 300 to 500 rental unit buildings in San Francisco. That's not true. That doesn't make any sense. 300 to 500 rental unit buildings. No, I don't know how many specific units there are. I've heard lots of different information. I think I remember hearing something when we were dealing with the seismic retrofit legislation saying there were somewhere between 8,000 and 9,000 multi-unit buildings, 5 units and up, that were going to be subject to the seismic retrofit ordinance, which I think our rental unit stock is several hundred thousand. It's like 250,000 units or 150,000 units, something like that. But I can certainly get an answer for you and get back to you on that. And Bert asks about the state of emergency. I think it's through the end of July right now. I don't know if it's been extended beyond the end of July, but I believe it's July 31st right now. Probably going to be extended given that we were the first county to declare shelter in place, and now we're slowly relaxing it, but I can't imagine that we're going to be removing that restriction in August. So with that, let me introduce Josh, and we can certainly talk about the rental market, the sale market, and also opportunities in the market over the course of the next few weeks. So go ahead, and thank you, Josh.
Good afternoon, everybody. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about, so as I mentioned last time, I'm going to pivot into more positive territory. I've been waiting for some buying opportunities to appear, and lo and behold, I found one. Today there's 48 properties on the market in San Francisco, 5 units or more. And this is the only one that I really liked. So I'm going to do a share screen here. Host disabled attendee screen sharing.
Oh, hold on.
Can you get me going, JJ?
Yeah, let me.
Or Antonio?
Actually, that's. How do I do that? Share screen, multiple participants, advanced sharing options. Oh, okay, here we go. All participants. Okay. Who can
There we go. Yep.
All participants. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a property, and this is just to give you kind of just a glance. There's nothing better than looking into the market to see what an actual property to see what the market's doing overall. The biggest, this is a property, it's a 5-unit property on South Van Ness and 17th in the Mission. It's priced at $2.2 million. It was in contract and then it fell out of contract. The seller recently took a $400,000 discount all of a sudden. So I'll scroll up to get a photo of the building itself. Nice Victorian, a little rough, but just needs a little shine. So a couple of things. So back on the market, meaning somebody wanted to buy it. They found out something they didn't like and dropped it. But back on the market also tells me that somebody liked it enough to put an offer in and do the due diligence and try to purchase it. So back on the market, and then with the price drop also tells me sellers anxious and wants to unload the property and is willing to take a discount. So this is what I moved down into showing you the numbers. So what struck me about this property, there's a few things. The price per square foot, you'll see building area. The price per square foot is $478 a square foot. That's low. The average on market today is about $600 a square foot. So low price per square foot shows me there's upside in rents. That's normally how that translates. So there's a lot of room for this building to grow and get more rental income. It's 5 units with 1 retail unit. Retail is soft right now. This one is the leased for 2025 to 5-year options. So that the retail space is nice and leased up and secure. So you take away the softness and the nervousness around retail with that. 4 residential units. So you can actually purchase this with a residential loan. You don't have to go out and get a commercial loan. It's kind of a hybrid residential / investor loan, which is handled more by the residential lenders as opposed to commercial lenders. The interest rate tends to be better, and your down payment is more in the 20% range as opposed to the 30% range for down payment. So I like that aspect to it as well. Down here in other, it says tankless water heaters. So this is just something, this is the nice thing to have, but what it really tells me is that this owner has cared about the building and has improved some things. Obviously, like I said, it's a little rough on the outside. They haven't put a ton of money into it, but there is some money being invested into it. So there's some indication there. I'll move down here. The number one most appealing aspect of this building to me is the cap rate. So cap rate at 5.74%, you can see it highlighted up here. And then the pro forma at 8.43%. So a 5.74 cap rate, to give you some perspective. So cap rate is just the amount of money you'd return, that in return you'd receive without any debt service. So you buy a property, all cash, you take in your rent, you have your expenses, you're going to earn 5.74% on your cash, which is a very good return in San Francisco. To give you some perspective, the newest 10 properties on the market, 5 units or more, are averaging about a 4 cap. So this is a 5.74 cap, so it's almost 3% more in returns. And then that jump to 8.43%. So usually when you see a high cap rate, you're usually, there's not a whole lot of upside left in it. They're giving you kind of the win on the front end, but they're giving you a win on the front end and room to grow as the building kind of goes vacant. So I like this a lot. I like this relationship. You just don't see it very much. You don't see it at all in San Francisco. So something's going on here in terms of, I think, the position of the seller. So these are just kind of the numbers broken down. Your net operating income being $126,000. So obviously after that number, you're going to have debt service. You're going to eat up a big chunk of that. But I scroll down to the rent roll here. The 3-bedroom, this is a vacant unit here at 3189 17th Street. They're saying $5,500 is market for that unit. I haven't walked it. I haven't seen it. This is where I lean on JJ and John, and I say, hey guys, could we get $5,500 for this 3-bedroom? And they say yes or no or close, and they give me a number. So you guys are welcome to chime in and say yes or no. But so you know, there's 13,575 gross income per month, really solid at that purchase price. And like I said, that 13,000 jumped to 18,000, so 5,000 in monthly income upside in this deal is really nice. You scroll down some photos. This is the commercial space, so it's already renovated. It's done, stable tenant, nice ADA bathroom here. The units, a little rough, but decent rent. Go down here. This is the vacant unit. At 55, you probably have trouble getting 5,500 in this current condition if this is the vacant unit, but you renovate it and well worth the money. Nice box ceiling here. Another picture of the unit. This is the other aspect of this building that I think is very interesting. When JJ and I walk buildings, we're constantly looking at basements as opportunities to build out or use. rent it for storage space, laundry, whatever it may be, or build ADUs, actually add units to the building. I don't know exactly where this basement space is, but this is something that we look for and find. I can't tell the height limits on that. There's a lot of questions around that, but that's another appealing piece. So anyway, this is a building that I like, and I just wanted to start bringing properties that it's basically like there's ripe fruit shaking from the tree here, and there's going to be a couple like this that drop in, and it's just good to see. The cap rates, you're definitely seeing some price discounting happening. So you're definitely still seeing a lot of people holding on to these really big numbers and these really low cap rates of thinking that it was last year, pre-COVID, and holding out. Some of them are moving, more on the trophy side are moving, but some are certainly languishing. So that's just what I wanted to share with the group. And if anybody has any questions, happy to take them.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Josh?
And also anything that, if people are interested in an aspect of the market, also just tell me about kind of what you'd like to hear about or see, or, I'm happy to kind of dig in based on what you're interested in as well. And at this point, I'm just sharing what I like. And JJ and I have these talks all the time, and we kind of geek out on this stuff. But only if it's interesting to you do I want to share these properties.
Yeah, I like that one. I think your analysis of a big price cut is a good one, to say that you've got somebody who liked the building and for whatever reason couldn't do the deal, and a seller that seems to need to leave. Yeah, we can certainly look at that. And Don is asking if the presentation is available on our website, and it certainly will be. I can make the presentation available to everybody. I'll send it out as a PDF and as a follow-up. And then, as always, these video presentations are available on our Smart Apartment Advisor website on the YouTube channel. So you can go back and look at all these videos and get a sense of where we're at, and catch up on the conversations if you missed a few. So yeah, with that, I open it up for any further questions. If anybody has questions, comments, ideas, topics they want to discuss, I'm happy to discuss them with you now. All right, well, with that, I will say goodbye for the afternoon. Thanks, everybody. I hope you're having a good week, and the rest of your week is also even better. And I look forward to seeing you again on Friday. We'll have a good talk with Denise about the legal ramifications of the legislation, the response in terms of the industry filing a lawsuit, and where we're at with any other issues related to the pandemic or property management in general. And feel free to drop us a line. Let us know if you're interested in the property that we presented. And also let us know. We'll have something more to talk about next on Friday as well, as far as buildings and investment opportunities. So we're happy to chat, and glad to have you on the calls. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.